Today I'm going to talk about terminology and how to actually distinguish my made up world from our real world while still being able to describe the story in an at least somewhat understandable way. So, to begin with, I am fine with using words that the reader will understand, like when I'm describing taste, using the words sweet or sour, bitter, and such, although what those words are describing should be different than what me, the person behind the pen, is familiar with. For example, I don't want any potatoes in my made up world or the literal bread that we have. Same with the sun. I think it would be fine to describe it as immensely hot, but the word sun is not something that I would like to use. Then what about directions? Left or right? I think I'm fine with that. On the other hand, north and south, I believe that I should not be using those since they do feel a bit more specific to our world and so on. But here's the catch. I need to make sure that I'm not just coming up with terms that are the exact equivalent of what they mean in our real world without any real connection to my imaginary setting. I don't want to end up with a potato being used exactly like our potato, just being called a different name. That would not create a different world in my eyes. And that in turn requires imagination that I'm not sure if I'm in possession of. Because there is another point. Currently, I don't want to use the same setting for different stories, which would mean in the long run that I would have to create something original for every single story that I would like to write. So, what I will end up doing most probably is to do as much as I can to use what is familiar to me in cases where my imagination fails me, and on the other hand, at least attempt to incorporate as many new ideas as possible as I'm capable of, seamlessly weave them into the world building, provide proper explanations and introduction to these so that the reader does not get confused but also doesn't just feel as if the story just set in this recolored version of our world that lacks much to offer in terms of being truly different, or at least different in the definition that I use when I'm talking about story that is set in a fictional setting, and I'll see how long I can keep that up before I run out of ideas completely. And now the Rabbit Arrows are on a trip, decided to camp at the foot of a hill called Mount Snake, an ominous name, maybe an omen foreshadowing some of the adventure they are going to go through this time. And both Speedy and Redcap are quite interested in trying to explore the place and maybe meet some of its residents after whom the peak is called. They do receive a warning from Mirag, but their eagerness unquenched. Redcap arms himself with a stick that will supposedly protect him from any possible vipers they might encounter. Speedy provides some trivia about said snakes and how they are called in Slovak. And after searching around for a bit, they find one peacefully coiled, minding its own business, soaking in the sun. And while Speedy is getting ready to run for his life, Redcap becomes a living embodiment of a phrase, an idiom from my country that basically says that you are not supposed to tease a snake with your bare foot, although he is using the stick not in a malicious way. He's not exactly touching the snake, just like waving it around it, wanting to see the animal in action. Well, his own actions have a reaction that almost anyone could probably expect. The Viper does not enjoy being bothered by this weird legged creature, and Redcap gets bitten by it. The duo rushes back to the camp and they quickly began assessing the situation, with Indra thinking that they should try to suck out the poison, which Mirek immediately shoots down, warning against that in case of some injuries in your mouth. It could lead to just a whole nother disaster. So instead, they are tying the wound, well, tying the leg above the wound so that the poison can't spread towards the heart. Mirek gives another warning that the knot needs to be loosened after about 30 minutes to prevent gangrene. Then use ammonia to clean it up and seal the deal with cauterizing the wound with a burning stick. And after that, Redcap gets carried to the nearest hospital to receive an antidote, although he is bummed by the fact that he ruined the trip for everyone. The rest of the club is just happy that the help will arrive in time, and thus everything ends well. Then we see Indra talking to his mother. He's looking out the window, observing a constant torrential rain that, according to his mother, has been ongoing for the entire week and might cause them to abandon their plans for their next adventure. But just in time for their next trip, it actually stops raining so they can march onward. After studying the map for a bit, they decide to follow a stream against the flow and explore some true wilderness. After some time, they reach their first obstacle. The terrain around the stream gets interrupted by a rock that reaches deep into the water, thus preventing them from going around it. Yarka tries to climb around it, leaving his bag behind, but the rock is way too slippery after the rain has been washing over it for a whole week, which lands him in the water, with Speedy telling him to say hi to. And now I'm in a pickle because he names this sort of a water spirit, but male, from our Czech folklore, with no real equivalent in English, maybe tritons, but it's basically a water naiad, a nymph that lives underwater, usually quite evil, although occasionally portrayed as helpful or just mischievous. But anyway, he just tells Yarka to give this spirit his regards on the way down. So their only option is to climb on top of the rock, and hopefully the terrain will be possible. Well, there is another rock right after that. Fortunately for them, there is a log laying on the shore, possibly brought here when the water was high from the constant raining, and it is long enough to reach the other side of the shore. So they carefully plant it across the stream and then began crossing it using this makeshift bridge. The four of them take it safe. They use a stick to balance themselves leaning on it, using them like walking sticks, which Speedy thinks is cowardly, and promises to show them his own crossing, stickless and proud. Well, of course, he slips off and falls into the water, more concerned about the fate of the Easter bread that his mom gave him, that he's been carrying around in his bag, than with his impending bath. When firmly planted in the water, Mirek tries to offer him the stick that he had used to cross the stream as a lifeline. Speedy is struggling to grab onto it, screaming, worried that he'll get taken by the flow all the way into the sea. Please bear in mind that Czech Republic is a fully enclosed country with no access to sea, so it would take a while. And when he finally gets onto the shore, he takes out a drenched, depressing sight of a pastry that used to be a beautiful Easter bread. Mirek tries to placate him, offering that the rest of the club will share their supplies with him, which does the exact opposite, sending Speed into a frenzy of trying to explain to them that he is barely able to hold his laughter, that there is absolutely no frown going on around here, and what he is supposed to do to convince them that is indeed the case. Tell them some jokes, and that's for today. I am going to continue trying to assemble my thoughts on storytelling into something comprehensible and go through more tales of the rapid arrows.